Hello, my presentation is on how stress affects the body. And the purpose of my presentation is I'm going to talk about the physical, emotional, and mental effects of stress. And I'm also going to talk about how to cope with stress in a healthy and effective way. So, especially the last few years in college, I've noticed that when I'm stressed, I have, out of the emotional, physical, and mental symptoms, mostly I have physical. And for me, my hips get tight, my jaw gets tight, and my throat becomes constricted, kind of like the feeling when you're gonna cry. And I've also noticed that mentally, I feel very different when I'm stressed versus when I'm not stressed. When I'm stressed, it's really hard to concentrate on anything besides the stressor, and it's hard to get anything done like homework or a task that I have at hand. And I've also noticed that when I'm stressed, my emotional health isn't as good either because I'm sad and my anxiety feels very much heightened. And obviously, stress is something that we all have to go through. It's just a matter of how to handle it in an effective way. And as I have stated earlier, stress affects us mentally, physically, and emotionally. So, why do we have stress? Even though stress is really viewed in a negative light, like most things, we have things for a reason, and that goes along with stress too. So, stress is the body's reaction to harmful situations, and our bodies are equipped to handle a little bit of stress. However, we can't handle it long term without consequences. And I found this interesting because I know when I'm in a stressful situation, I can only handle it for a short amount of time before I need to figure out what to do and until the situation's resolved. And the reason we can only handle it for a short amount of time is because stress puts our bodies in fight or flight mode, and we can only be in fight or flight mode for a little bit of time. We can't operate in fight or flight for a long amount of time. So, like I said, there are some positives of stress, and one of the first positives is it does give us a burst of energy that can help us decide what to do when we're faced with stressful situations. Do A or B, it gives us that energy to make a decision. And it can help us avoid physically stressful situations. That's kind of the fight or flight thing. Like, if there's something dangerous, it can tell us, okay, we have to get away from this, or like flight. It can boost your memory, and once again, these positives only are to be considered with small amounts of stress. Once it's a lot of stress, it definitely obviously turns to negative. So here are some of the physical symptoms of stress: headaches, upset stomach, chest pain, dry mouth, clenched jaw. And that's like short term. Long term, chronic, long term stresses can cause diseases such as cardiovascular disease. And if you're stressed, your immunities are weakened, so you can get sick more often with just sicknesses like the common cold, stuff like that. And trouble falling, staying asleep, insomnia, changes in appetite. I thought this one was really interesting because I know personally when I'm really stressed, I can't eat, but I know there's people who are like stress eaters, so I think that's really interesting. Neck and back pain, muscle spasms, cold, sweaty hands and feet, dizziness, difficulty breathing, and difficulty breathing kind of goes along with the chest pain, and then frequent urination. And there is a lot of other physical symptoms of stress. These are just a few that I jotted down that I think are the most common. Moving on to mentally, some mental issues we face when we are stressed are the inability to focus, constant worrying, forgetfulness, poor judgment, and disorganization. I thought this was interesting because when I'm really stressed out, I'll forget what I was going to do or just kind of be all over the place, disorganized. And stress increases the risk of developing anxiety, depression for people with chronic stress. And the inability to complete tasks and mental disorders can be heightened. So that means like if you have anxiety and it's kind of just managed at bay, when you're under a stressful situation, it can spike and get heightened. Same with other things like depression, bipolar, just other mental disorders. So how does stress affect us emotionally? So some of the emotional effects are mood swings, irritability, compulsive behavior, and that's more behavior than emotional, but I read one of the compulsive behavior is like gambling, for an example. Depression, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, feeling out of control or wanting to take control of the situation, and obviously having trouble relaxing your mind. It's really busy and not being able to calm down. So something really important for everyone is how to manage your stress. Now you know why we have stress and how it can affect us. Now it's time to learn how to manage and handle it. I think it's really important to learn why we have it because I think a lot of people just think it's a really negative thing, but now you know that it's something we have to have. So, managing stress. There's a lot of ways you can manage your stress. One way to manage your stress is to know that some situations you can't control and accept what you cannot control and focus on yourself. This is a good one because it just kind of puts the situation to sleep and just kind of accept, okay, I can't control it and I need to just let it go. Physical activity, endorphins are released. That's always good, helps with stress. Eat healthy. There's foods that actually can lower your stress. Get plenty of sleep. When you have sleep, you think more clear, you can handle situations better. Overall, healthy lifestyle just kind of goes along with those. Positive self-talk is a big one. Something I like to think of is how would you talk to your best friend? Is kind of positive self-talk because you wouldn't tell your best friend like the negative things that you're telling yourself. So that's one way to think of positive self-talk. Meditation, breathing exercises, just taking a deep breath. Take yourself out of the situation, look at it from other perspectives, kind of taking a step back and just thinking some things. And sometimes we think things in our head just like get blown up. Maybe it's not that big of a deal actually. So if you just take a step back and assess the situation. Journaling, self-reflecting. So with journaling, the act of just writing down is good for you, but also being able to like look at it. And remember, it's crucial to learn how to manage your stress. Otherwise, there can be the mental, physical, and emotional repercussions that we talked about in the earlier slides. So continuing with managing stress, I have a couple more that I wanted to talk about. So don't shut people out, contact a loved one. It's important to talk to people that you can trust and people that you love when you're in stressful situations because they can really help you out. Break it down into smaller parts, tackle it one step at a time. If it's really overwhelming, again, journaling, writing it down, and then breaking it down into smaller parts can be helpful so you can physically see it. Talk it out with someone you trust. It's never good to keep things bottled in. So just talking it with someone you trust. These two kind of go together, I think. Sleep on it and count to 10 before you respond or react. I think that's just kind of, if there's a situation and you just want to react really strongly, just to kind of take a step back and think, okay, what's really going on here? And maybe I'm reacting too strongly. Avoid caffeine and alcohol is a good one because caffeine is a stimulant. So like how we talked about the physical symptoms like chest pain, like it's going to get your heart going really. And then if you're stressed, it just kind of accelerates that. And then alcohol is depressant. So if you're sad over your stress, it's going to bring you down more. So just avoiding those two things is important and crucial in stressful situations, or limiting them. So fortunately, if you are stressed, you're not alone and there's help for you. A mental health provider, a therapist, that's always helpful because you can talk it out and they're professional, so they can tailor a plan that works for you and tell you exactly what to do. Extreme cases, the National Suicide Hotline. Medical provider can help you learn exercises to eliminate, manage physical symptoms. The gal I have right here is doing something called the cobbler's pose, and that's a good hip opener. And one of the physical symptoms of stress is tight hips, so I think that's a really good pose. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope it has helped you understand why we have stress and healthy ways to cope with stress. And here are my sources. Thank you.